For decades, the U.S. military operated on a single assumption. To offset numerical disadvantages, you build fewer, vastly superior weapons. The defense establishment codified this as the exquisite platform approach. Procurement shifted toward producing very small fleets of heavily crewed, multi-million-dollar systems. The ultimate result of this doctrine is the modern fifth-generation stealth platform. With internal weapons bays and highly integrated sensors, these aircraft represent the absolute peak of engineering complexity and human piloting capability. But extreme complexity creates financial and logistical bottlenecks. When each unit costs tens of millions of dollars and requires extensive maintenance, militaries can only afford to field a handful of them. Autonomous systems change the logic of the battlefield. When machines pilot themselves, the high cost and low numbers of an exquisite fleet become a critical vulnerability. The replacement model is precise mass. This requires deploying fleets of cheap, pilotless, autonomous, uncrewed vehicles capable of highly coordinated, lethal action. Against a peer armed with thousands of autonomous drones, the math of an exquisite fleet leads directly to total exhaustion. To calculate the exact point where a swarm of cheap drones defeats a superior fighter jet, we have to transition from strategic doctrine to pure mathematics. This is the Lanchester Square Law. It is a mathematical framework of differential equations used by defense analysts to model attrition warfare, where the winner is determined by grinding down the opponent's forces. The equation relies on two specific levers. The first is effectiveness, or lethality, representing how many enemy units one side can destroy over time. The second lever is quantity, or mass, representing the raw number of units physically engaged in the battle. Historically, human combat rarely fits this equation perfectly. Human soldiers retreat, experience fatigue, and suffer from psychological friction that distorts the math. Autonomous artificial intelligence solves this mathematical problem. Machines engage targets simultaneously and fight to total destruction without a single moment of hesitation. By stripping away the unpredictable fog of human psychology, artificial intelligence shifts air combat into a calculable equation of mass and attrition. This is a chart showing the exact break-even point between quantity and quality in combat. The x-axis measures the lethality advantage of the technologically superior force. The y-axis tracks the numerical advantage of the larger, cheaper force. The logarithmic curve dividing the chart is a strict mathematical border. It separates the blue zone below, where the more effective side wins, from the red zone above, where the more numerous side wins. To determine the absolute maximum lethality advantage a new technology can provide, we can establish a historical baseline. Late in World War II, Germany introduced the Me-262 jet fighter. The United States countered with the P-51D Mustang, an aircraft that still relied on a traditional piston engine. This chart plots that historical data onto the Lanchester model. The advanced German jet operated with roughly a 9-to-1 lethality advantage over the American Mustang. Tracing that 9-to-1 lethality line up to where it intersects the curve provides a definitive answer. A 3-to-1 numerical advantage in Mustangs mathematically guarantees victory over the superior jets.
No matter how exquisitely engineered a weapons platform is, there is a hard, calculable threshold where its technological superiority is crushed by overwhelming numbers. However, there is a critical strategic constraint. Winning a tactical battle with sheer numbers is useless if building that massive force bankrupts your state. This chart shows the cost-effectiveness frontier, which adds financial reality to the Lanchester combat model. Because a single Me-262 only cost 1.5 times more than a P-51D, the dashed cost ratio line sits very low on the y-axis. Look at the expansive red region above the dashed line. Here, the Mustangs win the battle, but building their massive fleet costs significantly more in total than the entire fleet of German jets. Now look at the tiny purple sliver trapped between the curve and the dashed line. This is the incredibly narrow margin where a larger force wins the battle and actually costs less overall. Historically, defeating quality with mass was financially inefficient. This specific economic reality explains why the U.S. defense establishment shifted entirely away from mass and prioritized exquisite quality. Fast forward to modern peer competition. To understand the threat, we must run this exact math, comparing a fifth-generation exquisite fighter, like the Chinese J-20, to a modern autonomous drone. Autonomy drastically lowers unit costs by eliminating human life support, massive pilot training pipelines, and large protective airframes entirely. We can calculate this using a parametric cost estimate. This statistical method uses historical data and physical variables to predict future production costs. Under this parametric model, a fully crewed J-20 costs roughly 4.71 times more than an autonomous XQ-58 drone equivalent. This updated Lanchester model applies the modern cost disparity. By shifting the cost ratio line upward to 4.71, the purple area of victory expands. Autonomy radically drops unit costs, enabling a robotic force to defeat an exquisite force at a fraction of the price. Autonomy removes the historical price tag of mass. A military that continues to buy only exquisite platforms will eventually find itself outspent and outfought by a cheaper, robotic force. But a physical constraint threatens to neutralize this mathematical advantage: geography and power projection. This physical constraint comes down to sortie generation. Sortie generation is the rate at which a unit can launch aircraft on combat missions. This mathematical mass only truly matters if hundreds of drones can physically reach the battlespace at the exact same time. This chart illustrates sortie generation plotted against distance. As the distance from the target increases along the x-axis, the daily sortie rate of shorter-range autonomous drones plummets, artificially cutting their numerical advantage. To realize the mathematical advantage of artificial intelligence, militaries must adopt highly distributed basing. They must scatter runway-independent drones across multiple islands and maritime platforms far closer to the threat. Exquisite platforms, regardless of their stealth capabilities or advanced sensors, cannot survive the brutal Lanchester mathematics of affordable robotic mass. Ultimately, the future of global air superiority belongs to the nation that fully masters the arithmetic of artificial intelligence attrition.